Fighting for Life by Lila Rose. Chapter 26. Beware of False Compassion. Newly married, Joe and I had just moved to Los Angeles and discovered within weeks that we were pregnant. We were thrilled, and I immediately started hunting for an OBGYN. I was hoping to find an OB who was pro-life. I asked around for weeks, but was having trouble getting referrals. While most doctors won't do what are considered elective abortions, and certainly won't work at an abortion clinic, many may commit abortions if the baby is sick or disabled. A friend recommended a doctor who did not do abortions. Encouraged by the news, I made an appointment. On the scheduled day, I headed to her office in one of the nicer parts of Los Angeles. The clinic had valet parking. When I handed over the keys to my badly in need of a wash, cluttered Hyundai Elantra with cloth seats to the parking attendant, I felt more than a little bit out of place. I always felt that way in posh parts of LA. The office was pristine. Several women sat in the waiting room, fashionably dressed, with designer handbags and shoes. After an ultrasound and check-in with a friendly nurse, I sat down with the doctor in her office. She was kind and professional, and I immediately felt some relief. Perhaps I had finally found my doctor. After a few minutes of chit-chat and a discussion of my pregnancy, I mentioned that she had been referred to me as a pro-life doctor who did not do abortions. I explained why that fact was important to me. Correct, she nodded. I don't do any terminations, any elective terminations. Elective terminations. Those words typically mean an abortion without the rationale of a health defect in the baby to justify the abortion. For too many doctors, the proper medical response to a sick or disabled baby is abortion. My heart sank. Oh no. Why did she use the word elective? I asked her hesitantly. So, do you do any terminations that aren't elective? The doctor grew visibly uncomfortable. Well, I won't do any terminations if the baby has Down syndrome or anything like that. I'm a pastor's daughter. I'm really conservative. Almost all the other doctors here do those abortions, but I sleep well at night. There's only one other doctor here as conservative as I am. She's an Orthodox Jew, but even she will do a Down syndrome abortion. Down syndrome abortion? She was talking about her colleague dismembering and killing a baby with Down syndrome for no other reason than the baby had Down syndrome. She said this without a hint of outrage. The tension in the office was thick. I felt her obvious discomfort, and I shared it. How strange that we have to have these conversations in a doctor's office. I was there hoping to find a doctor to care for me and my preborn child, yet here we were, discussing which class of babies can be killed and by whom. I hated having to ask the follow-up question, but I sensed there was more to the story than what she had shared. It's really good you don't abort babies with Down syndrome, I said slowly. I'm glad to hear that. I'm also very conservative. I am Catholic. To clarify, you don't do any abortions at all, or you do some, just in certain cases? I do some, but only if the baby is going to die, she answered a little flatly. What do you mean by if the baby is going to die? I asked. They are anencephaly cases, she said. I was very familiar with such cases. Live Action News has done considerable reporting on the syndrome. These babies develop in the womb with most of their brain missing. Sometimes only the brainstem is present. Many end up being miscarried. Others do not survive birth or live only for the first few hours thereafter. In some cases, however, these babies can live for years. There was a beautiful story Live Action featured of a baby boy named Jackson. Jackson had anencephaly, and the doctors told his parents he would die and recommended abortion several times. The parents refused, knowing that his life had value, even though he was disabled. Even if his life promised to be very short, it was not their right, or anyone's right, to deprive him of it. Jackson ended up living 5 years. And although his doctor said it would be physically impossible for him to speak, Jackson learned to say Mama and Dada, a miracle given how much of his brain was missing. I realized that my would-be doctor was willing to kill a baby like Jackson. We all die, I said quietly. I looked at her and she looked back at me. Inside, I was so full of sadness. I work with a group that does considerable reporting on these cases, I said. I know a lot of these babies die before birth, but some live longer, even for a few years. And they bring a lot of joy to their families. I don't think that's possible, she said stiffly. This doctor, like most, did not like thinking about what she was capable of doing. I could tell she considered herself the most morally conscious doctor in her practice, maybe even in all of Los Angeles. I had inadvertently trespassed on a part of her conscience that had grown numb. I pulled up Jackson's story on my phone and offered to show it to her. The doctor glanced at it but was still in unbelief. Usually not at a loss for words, I felt momentarily quiet. Even if babies die in a miscarriage or at birth, isn't that different than a doctor ending their life? I finally asked. If there was a born child who lost most of their brain function in a tragic accident but wasn't on life support, would it be okay to intentionally kill them? She paused. I could tell the conversation was overwhelming to her. It certainly overwhelmed me. It felt like the room was spinning and time was in suspension. It's something I do, she said defensively, but I won't do most abortions. I was even offered a partnership at a big firm here, and I said no because they wanted me to do elective. I won't do abortions if there's a physical disability, even a bad one. The doctor explained that she almost hadn't gone into obstetrics and gynecology because there are so many troubling ethical issues. She cited assistive reproductive technology, ART, genetic selection, and the implantation of multiple babies with the expectation of aborting some. I couldn't do any of that, she said. I looked at her silently. I sensed that she felt justified in her refusal to do most abortions. She felt she was the moral one, even while she killed the babies with anencephaly. Her moral worldview contradicted itself, and it seemed she had never reflected on the incoherence of it all. Is it a problem? She then asked me quietly. I mean, is it an issue for you? She wasn't confrontational, and neither was I. I felt so badly for her. I felt so badly for the babies. I was at a loss for words. Thank you for being so upfront with me, I said. I don't know. Do you know any doctors who don't do any terminations at all? No, she sighed. I am the most conservative doctor I know. I understand, I said. We looked at each other, the tension high. But more than that, a sadness permeated the room. I will be in touch, I said. At that moment, I did not know if I could work with her. I wasn't sure if I should go see another doctor. More than anything, though, I felt like going somewhere and crying. The doctor seemed as shaken as I was. Leaving the office, I felt torn inside. The awkwardness, the vulnerability of being there, pregnant, her pain, but most of all, shock. I knew I shouldn't be shocked. Abortion was everywhere. But here was a doctor, saying she was a Christian, a pastor's daughter, the most conservative of all the doctors she knew, who said she was against abortions, and yet she killed babies with anencephaly, and didn't even consider it killing. Tears flowed as soon as I got into the car. I couldn't stop crying. Big, deep sobs. And working with live action over the years, I've seen and heard the worst stories. I've had many opportunities to grieve, to cry, but this time the grief felt primal. I had my own baby in my womb, a little life with his heart beating, arms and legs kicking, and the doctor I hoped would deliver my baby was the same doctor who tore into pieces living babies with disabilities. These little anencephaly babies were being killed in the name of compassion, a false compassion. They weren't given the chance to be held in the arms of their mothers, even if only for a few moments. It was as if their own mothers, their own fathers, wished they had never even existed. They were destroyed before they had taken their first breath or opened their eyes. Resolve welled up inside me, the same resolve I had felt since I was a teenager, but even stronger, building like a current that breaks through a dam. Anger, heartache, and determination, all in one. I was a mother now. I knew what it was like to be a mother, to have a child in my womb who desperately needed safety and love. How could we continue to allow this cruelty? How could we turn our own wombs into death chambers for our children? I called Joe and told him I'd met with the doctor. She does abortions too, I said, still crying, on babies with anencephaly. It is so sad. It is so sad. Is there anyone in LA who doesn't? The medical system is so bad. I'm so sorry, love. It is so sad. He consoled me. We will find another doctor. Abortion taints much of today's medical profession. It is increasingly full of practitioners who at some point were told that abortion should be accepted as a normal part of healthcare. Over the years, I've corresponded with medical students distressed because they have been told they must watch or commit abortions as part of their medical training. They have legal rights to decline, so I often find myself connecting them with legal counsel. Increasingly prevalent is the justification that abortion is medically necessary, and therefore it should be legal. Abortion proponents argue either that the baby is disabled and therefore should be aborted, or that the mother's health or life is at risk, and therefore her pregnancy must be terminated. Sadly, this ideology is considered the norm by most doctors. It is driven by a false sense of compassion, that by supporting abortion for their reasons, they are doing the loving thing. But the truth is that abortion is never medically necessary, and it is never loving to kill. Some 4,500 pro-life American OBGYNs hold that it is possible to care for both a mother and her preborn child, even in high-risk situations, without intentionally ending the life of the child. A mother in need may be given medical treatments, such as chemotherapy for example, that may have an adverse effect on her developing child, but that is not an abortion. In extreme and rare cases, when pregnancy complications threaten a mother's life, such as toxemia or preeclampsia, the doctor may need to deliver the child prematurely, attempting to save the lives of both the child and the mother, but this is not an abortion. The doctor's intent is not to kill the baby. An abortion is different. It is designed to produce a dead baby, and it targets the baby's body for destruction. Preterm labor is much safer than late-term abortion. Keep in mind that in every abortion, the baby still must be delivered. Killing that child before birth or during delivery does nothing to improve the mother's health. In an opinion piece I co-authored with Dr. Donna Harrison, we put it this way. The reality is that even if the baby cannot live after we separate mother and baby, there is an undeniable difference between a doctor trying to save the baby after that separation against all odds and an abortionist deliberately and intentionally killing the baby within the womb. As we explained in the article, in a late-term abortion, the doctor injects a baby with a poison to stop the baby's heart. Labor is then induced, which takes between 2 and 4 days. Abortion is not a procedure done in true emergency situations, we concluded. The purpose of an abortion is to produce a dead baby, not to separate the mother and the baby. False compassion, the rationalization used to justify these abortions, is prevalent today. Just as I did in the doctor's office, you may find it in places you least expect it. Our discernment in recognizing it is essential. The word compassion literally means to suffer with, but false compassion refuses to suffer with. Instead, in the name of mercy, it often advocates to end the life of the one who suffers. That is in solidarity with those who hurt. It's the ultimate rejection of an ongoing relationship with those who hurt. False compassion offers an immoral solution to a problem, real or perceived, in the name of mercy. Twisted compassion is more dangerous than outright malice because it is more difficult to detect. Because of all the brokenness and pain in this world, we are sometimes told that it is compassionate to kill, that death is better than life, that abandoning our responsibility is better than accepting it. But it is simply not our right to take an innocent human life, no matter how much suffering we think we or another may face. We must do our best to alleviate suffering, but never by eliminating the sufferer. We do not advocate for sexually trafficked survivors by calling for their deaths. We don't work to protect the elderly, the frail, the poor, or the disenfranchised by saying it would be better to end their lives. Imagine how ridiculous it would have been if abolitionists had called for the killing of slaves to spare them the pain of their enslavement. If we love someone, we don't wish that they die. We should always fight to save lives and to make life better, not to end lives. There may come a limit to our ability to stop our own or someone else's suffering, and that's when we can remember that it is possible for suffering to be redemptive. We shouldn't run from it blindly. In many situations, we voluntarily choose to suffer to achieve something good. It is our love of control and love of self that tempts us to run from suffering. When considering an abortion, false compassion suggests abortion is the answer to the suffering of a terminally ill or disabled baby. However, in these cases, I've discovered that the reason for the abortion is often more about the parent's inability to bear the thought of having a disabled child than it is concern for the sick child suffering. Like Jackson, those who suffer or have severe disability can experience great love and joy, but only if those around them are willing to protect their right to live and to offer them that love. We should embrace the suffering of others and do our best to help them in their pain while affirming the gift of their life. This will require sacrifice, but when we will the good of the other, even to the point of pain, we discover the real richness of love.